Have you ever heard of the butterfly effect? For those who have seen the horror movie starring Ashton Kutcher, probably are familiar with the concept, but for those who haven't, it's more or less the idea of how even small little changes can have a major impact on an entire system's outcome later on down the road, especially systems that are more complex in nature, as they tend to be more unpredictably sensitive to its initial conditions that will play a major factor in how it ultimately ends up functioning and behaving. And though this is typically used in mathematics, as it's ironically enough is from the chaos theory, but it too can actually provide us a cheat sheet, if you will, to help clear up a lot of the mystery and confusion from the hot mess of chaos that seems to go hand in hand with any and everything pertaining to a narcissist, by helping to give a visual of where this initial hiccup in the development occurred, and then using it to help see why this ripple from the initial shock paved the way for the other changes to occur that ultimately results in one becoming a narcissist. Just as any complex system, the human brain is extremely sensitive to its early stages of development, with studies showing that the first 3 years of life are the most crucial part to our brain's development, laid the foundation for how we think, behave, and will interact in our relationships with others down the road. And there being a countless number of factors that can affect this development, either positively or negatively, from our genetics to the personality we're born with, to the environment we're in, and the interactions that we have with others. And as such has led to the age-old question, why do we do what we do? Which is how the concept of the butterfly effect can actually help visualize this, because what it suggests is, though you can't predict or guarantee that something will or won't have a major factor in the overall outcome, but you can still get an understanding and gather information to explain why it's functioning in the way that it is, by going back and trying to locate where the initial hiccup or deviation from the norm occurred. And this can help make sense as to how or why other parts of the system too went astray as a result of this glitch that happened early on, which can honestly be applied to why anyone does or behaves in such a manner, but is even more helpful with narcissistic personality disorder, because they do not think and behave anything like the average person. They legitimately are not wired the same. And just as you would have a better chance at getting a valid, logical, reasonable explanation from the brick wall than you would from them, it is just as hard to stop yourself from still trying to get that explanation, because it's within our instinctual drive to obtain balance by making sense of the things that happen to and around us. But here's the thing. Narcissists are not a smidgen of the complexity that we perceive them as being. And in all actuality, the average person is far more complex, because we are constantly changing by striving to make sense of the things that happen so that we can learn from our experiences and grow from our mistakes as to not repeat them later on. Narcissists, on the other hand, not so much. They are forever spinning on their Ferris wheel of insanity, repeating the same behaviors over and over and over. Wash, rinse, repeat, on to the next with the same cycle. They are not people seeking balance, more people of extremes. And because they are wired so differently, so is their purpose and motivational forces that drive them, like a feral kitten versus a domesticated kitten, both looking like adorable little puffs of lovable fur. But underneath of that fur, they do not act the same, nor are they going to interact with you in the same manner. One is going to cuddle up on your lap and soak up in your loving. The other is going to try to shred you to pieces. Same goes with a narcissist, stemming off of their never forming a bond or attachment starting in infancy around 4 or 6 months. And because they never formed an attachment, they never had anything to detach from. So they gain no sense of trust. Everything and everyone to them is viewed as an extension of themselves, or is seen as an object in terms of there not having any kind of intrinsic value or seeing others as their own individual identity with feelings, opinions, values, and beliefs of their own, to which this is the most crucial piece to remember, and as well as can be applied to help make sense of something they did or said that tends to leave one reeling in wonder over, holds on to false hope, and shows reason behind how this led to the other areas in which they've lacked development that transforms the human experience as we know it. Because without a sense of others, you can take empathy, object constancy, and whole object relations and just toss them straight into the wood chipper, because they do not apply here, as they all require acknowledging others as an individual entity and are dependent on having connections and bonds with others they hold intrinsic value and meaning for, which narcissists are incapable of. They value others simply off of how they rank the service that you provide them and what service they need provided at any given moment. No one holds any form of intrinsic value whatsoever, which is why they are able to jump from one source to the next, have a few on the side for when they get bored, as well as a couple stowaways that they leave dangling off the cliff. Just in the event of an emergency, they'll have something to quickly reel back in. Doing so without a care in the world, like it ain't no thing but a chicken wing. Because, well, to them, it isn't, and with whole object relations in the wood chipper is where their black and white mentality, way of thinking, comes in. Everything to them is one way or the other. There's no middle ground, gray area, or in between whatsoever. Everything is one end of the extreme, from their delusional belief of superiority and grandeur to love bombing, to their psychotic temper tantrums and torturous silent treatments, down to the way that they will relentlessly poke and prod at you with their hot mental cattle prod to get you to the point where you literally explode, because they have no red light, no filter, no level of low they won't stoop, or the relentlessness to their getting what they want, be that in means of sex, attention, or revenge, as their maturity gets stuck in the freezer, permanently stunted, frozen with the maturity level of an adolescent as a result of their throwing their true self in a closet, locking the door, and tossing away the key as a defensive mechanism to ward off the unwanted negative feelings. Being people of the extreme, they create this delusional perception of themselves being some kind of god, full of power that controls the world, that they can rely on and depend on using and manipulating others. But because this happens so early on, when our brain is primed for learning, they become masters at manipulating and reading people's facial expressions, body language, like a predator would watch its prey, knowing exactly when to pounce, as do narcissists with their targets. Due to their being cognitively intact, as it's not like they're invalid, they're able to recognize and pick up on social norms, what's right and what's wrong, appropriate, unacceptable, and quickly realize very early on through trial and error where, when, and how to react in order to get their needs met, as well as to protect this image, eventually becoming their sole mission in life. And each time they successfully are able to pull this off, they become more confident, more cocky, as well as more evil and dangerous due to their sadistic nature, because they don't care how you feel about them. They just care that, yes, you see them as almighty and powerful, and their goal and mission in life to protect this image, viewing it as like their source of survival. They do whatever it takes to keep it such. One of the easiest ways for them to do this is stir up some confusion and create self-doubt in others, to which they go about with their demeaning remarks, insults, smear campaigns, and never-ending pathological lies and diarrhea of the mouth. And even after you've figured them out and know it deep down that these people have developed into pure evil, it still is so hard because it's way easier to learn something than it is to unlearn it. Why no contact is so important, because it is almost impossible for most people to remove the personal component to it, as well as remember that these people do not think and behave in the same way that you do, and trying to figure out anything they do in the same context that you do isn't going to work. And it won't, because they literally are not wired the same. There's nothing that you can do or say to change that. Nothing. Nada. Zero, zilch, nunya. And anyone with compassion or empathy in your instinct to want to try to help and want to try to save them. When you're dealing with somebody else with empathy and compassion, that usually is a good road to take. With a narcissist, it is not the case, because your empathy means squat to them, nothing. And then from within, this human tendency, as well social norms and political correctness, that elicits them to get pity, that aids in their enabling, which, yes, it sucks and it's unfortunate, but on the same note, they intentionally and deliberately stay in this permanent state of delusional psychosis because they don't want to face their unwanted feelings, which you can't help anybody who doesn't want to help themselves. And the best thing that you can do for them is to cut them off and let them shit or get off the pot and figure it out. Because until we do, there is zero chance of these people ever changing. Because as long as they have but one person enabling them, well, then they don't even have to consider thinking about changing. And they won't. And they are getting more evil by the day, being able to get supply at the touch of their fingertips. And why educating and knowing about their game and their mojo is so important, because they are out to destroy you, just like that feral little kitten would if you were to pick it up to give it a hug. And believe you me, you do not want to be the next target they have in line to prey on. Nobody deserves what these evil creatures bestow. So focus on you. Fuck the narcissist.